Alpha Pickleball Podcast, where we slice through the noise to bring you the juiciest insights, strategies, and stories from the dynamic world of pickleball. Join us as we serve up engaging conversations with top players, coaches, and enthusiasts, giving you an ace perspective on all things pickleball. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just stepping onto the court, get ready for a volley of knowledge that'll elevate your game to alpha levels. Let the rallies begin.
All right, welcome again to the show. I'm your host, Tats. I'm really excited to have Mike and Yui from the Canadian National Pickleball League here. Thank you both for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us,
Cheers,
Tats.
man. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. I looked on the website. I'm still quite a newbie in this. Walk me through the origin story of this league.
Oh, that's a good one. So Yui and I were working with a brand, Tyrol Pickleball, and we were touring with them as a sponsor of the PPA Tour. So at this time, it just happened that the Vibe Pickleball League was kind of starting to get its roots. And we were actually looking at an MLP team, or the possibility of putting together a group for an MLP team. But then along came, Dallas Mavericks ownership, and all of a sudden we're in a space where the affordability of MLP teams kind of went away rather rapidly. So we were down in Dallas, actually, and there was a tornado the one day. So we were kind of locked up in our hotel room, Yui, our business partner, Ryan, and I, and just throwing some ideas around about how we can stay involved in pickleball, and because we saw team pickleball as a huge growth opportunity, right? So just kind of like throwing ideas around, and then came up with, let's try this in Canada. And then came
because
back
we were like, what would be cheaper than buying an MLP team is starting a whole league in Canada.
Yeah, it sounded logical at the time. Yeah, so we got that together, kind of put the idea together, came back here, started connecting with some Canadian folks. We really were kind of ignorant of the Canadian pickleball scene ourselves. We spent all of our time down in the US, like I said, PPA Tour, APP, some other like smaller Florida events. So we really weren't sure of what was going on in Canada, and kind of came to learn that things were very fragmented here, that many of the players didn't ever face off against each other, depending on what region of the country they were from. Some of the Alberta and BC folks played together at events, but there would be people in Ontario who had never even shown up to play against, some of the higher level West Coast players. So yeah, one thing led to another, and we put enough people together that we figured we could run this, and we saw a lot of interest and opportunity. So we, put together the Canadian League and managed to survive a first season.
Yeah, for sure. So, you got a core group of people, talk to them. I guess just, getting some teams together in discussion, like you said. From that, Mike, what's your background? Then we'll talk to you.
Yeah, I'm an economist, and then kind of just serial entrepreneur as a trade. So me and Ryan have run a bit of an incubator over the years. We're in digital marketing and media buying and things like that. So digital publishing, just kind of that whole digital world of all things. And we kind of leverage that to then get involved with other businesses, which we then kind of, help grow from a marketing angle, especially digital. But then obviously with Tyrol, we got heavily involved, boots on the ground down there at tournaments and things like that. So we just kind of, take on projects and then help grow them and usually exit. But this one's kind of a bit different.
Yui, how about yourself? What's your background?
My background's in media production and music production. So a lot of what I have done prior and still at the moment, prior to pickleball, was, live off licensing money. My music's on networks like ESPN, Fox, Disney, ABC. So like a lot of these networks playing my music generates royalties, and that was my life prior to pickleball. And then basically we had Tyrell come tap in with me and say, hey, we could use your help with some content creation and creative direction. And so that was my entry into the pickleball world. I'm a terrible pickleball player by all accounts. But I really enjoy the community that pickleball seems to foster. The people in it are, bar none, the best people I've ever met in my life. And pickleball has resulted in so many new friends and connections that, it's a great playground to play in. And they're very welcoming of people who want to be part of the community, even though they're not great players like myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, walk me through where you, Mike, walk me through where you are today as a league and some of the milestones, and walk me through, in both of us, your vision going forward.
Sure. I think where I would say we are today in a business cycle is kind of our minimum viable product. Last year was our proof of concept. Most of us hadn't been heavily involved in events management, so we brought in a few, smart folks in that space that could kind of lead us through the first year. But now at this point, we're pretty comfortable, running events, doing all of the planning associated with it. Last year, we kind of got started in February and we were running events by June. So there wasn't a lot of runway for things. So it was very frantic. The difference this year is we've kind of got a plan. We're a few months ahead of getting everything set up and whatnot, from venues to scheduling to all of those pieces. And now it's just a matter of getting a few more hats in the ring from high-level stakeholders, sponsors and team owners and things like that. So we've sold half of the teams at this point, and we just kind of look to fit the right groups in to bring other things to the pickleball space, right? Like all of our groups kind of have the ability to either bring new eyes to the sport or growth within the sport itself. So we're just, working our way along slowly and kind of like trying to make the right decisions. So we put together a team of teams that can help grow pickleball in Canada.
Got it. So there's some sort of cost to come in, but it feels like you're being a lot more careful, the operators, because their ability to operate. So maybe like selling a highly prized franchise, you don't want to give it to someone that runs it into the ground.
Exactly. Yeah, we're being very careful about it.
Oops.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying we're very careful to let to really impress upon prospective owners that this isn't a passive investment. And if you're looking to make a passive investment, there's way better and faster ways to make that investment convert. And so if you're looking at the Canadian National Pickleball League as something you want to get into, it's important to remember you're basically buying yourself a full-time job and then some. I think that's the key to keep in mind, right, Mike? Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a hands-on operation, and we need our, the coaches, the GMs, the owners, to really want to be part of this and not just say financially, throwing money at it and hoping it'll grow, because that's not how teams grow.
All right, cool. So I'm going to pretend I'm an owner. I just got a franchise. What are my action steps? What do I need to start to know about sort of being a owner?
Well, I guess there's a few pieces of the puzzle there, right? Like there's the on-court piece. You're going to want to build a team, obviously, that can represent you well out there on the court. So we're going into the draft right now. Tuesday is our draft. So some of the teams have re-signed players from last year, and some of the teams are working with a clean slate. So the first piece of your puzzle is to build a team that's going to be able to practice together, improve together, and then, put a good product out there on the court. And then I think the second phase that you're going to go into is, building the business around pickleball. A lot of cases, it's someone who already has a business in pickleball and then is kind of just like laterally scaling. So, I mean, if you own a paddle company or a facility company or those kind of things, seem to be the people that are floating around the teams at this point. So just the idea would be you're going to build a business around pickleball. We'll be running events, each of the teams in all the different regions across the country. Those events will eventually become kind of interconnected, along the lines of a tour or something like that, but more on the amateur side of things. And then we'll also work with schools and universities in regions so that they can build, kind of the feeder system that's going to push into the league, because the goal here obviously is the next generation of pickleball players to be on a level that we haven't seen today, right? And then kind of aspire towards that high quality on-court play. So it's a two-prong, it's the business side of running a sports organization when that comes to like dealing with local sponsors, dealing with local activations and things like that, bringing your players out in the community to, drive awareness of your brand and those things. There'll be merchandising and all of that sort of stuff. So the idea here is to kind of like get into that same space as the NHL, the CFL and those kind of things, and just be, one of Canada's major sports.
Got it. Makes sense. And then you talked about, I guess as an owner, you just have to figure out what makes sense for you in terms of the type of players you want. How can you get them together? Because I'm assuming the owners are on the hook to fly people out if they want people to practice or, negotiate to see what makes sense. And then I guess there's a certain amount of events where everyone gets together to decide, who's the best.
For sure. Yeah, so we've got 3 regular season events this season and then a playoff. But most of the teams are planning to do like a training camp, like an on-site where everyone gets together. Some of the teams I know are considering flying their players out and going somewhere like Florida or things like that to get in a training session. So it's really developing along the same lines as, a major sports league would. Like the NFL training camps are starting now. Season's not until September, but they have voluntary camps for the players and things like that to start getting acclimated with the teams. So I would expect right after our draft that teams kind of dive right in and figure out how to get together and get on the same training regimen at the very least. If all they can do is meet digitally, then they're at least going to learn, here's what we want to focus on. This is what we want our team to be about, whether that's good defense or we want to control the game at the net or, we want to get out there and be bangers, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a team strategy. Now, I'm sure that this differs, but you probably heard some when people, well, let's start from the draft. Like when you have the draft qualifier, what's that format? What are the owners looking for?
So we switched our format on the qualifiers this year. Last year was kind of just a randomized scramble where you could wind up with whoever as different partners. The goal was just to see you play with different people. But what we found was that then you wound up playing the same opponents kind of over and over again, just because of the way the randomization was optimized. So this year we switched it to a king and queen's court format. So basically after every match, you and your partner, whether you won or lost, would split and be on opposite sides. So we would get the idea of, okay, this team won. And then in the next game, you could say, okay, who was the stronger partner? Because now they're facing off against each other. So we did that in both doubles and then a mixed doubles format. And the owners were really kind of hanging around that court one on both sides, just watching who was consistently up there battling for the top spots, who they played well with or didn't. And just kind of what the important pieces were for them, right? So some people really, I've noticed, have focused around footwork and saying, well, if they don't do other things right, as long as they do good footwork, I can develop the other pieces, right? Other people are looking for, they have a tennis background. I know how to convert tennis players to pickleball players, right? So each of the teams kind of has a different expertise, and they're just using that to kind of, it's interesting for me at the inside to hear from all of the different teams and see that they're all looking at things completely differently from one another. It's not like there's this consensus of this is the best player. They're all like, okay, this is the best player for me.
Yeah, so you could end up winning these qualifiers, but it might not fit in with their, we need someone local so they could play a lot together, or they have this and I'm good at teaching this. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, for sure. Or the other intangible skills that can come with it, right? Like there are folks involved that have, whether it's a sports medicine background or things along those lines that could be an asset to a team, or high level coaching experience in tennis and things like that. So you might be wanting to draft a player who can be an alternate, but that can also serve as a trainer or a coach or, have another a value add to the team.
Yeah, like community, they're great at getting people out, community liaison, right?
Exactly.
At the
Exactly. Yeah.
audience and stuff like that.
Yeah,
That's
there's plenty of folks involved that are in marketing and social media and things like that, and I can see that they'll float to the top naturally because they're used to being forward-facing people,
yeah,
right? So they're used to talking to people, they're used to being involved and engaged, and I think that those people are stronger at engaging on social media and in the community.
nice. I'll gonna direct this to Yui. Yui, we're starting to talk about social and stuff. You're very active there. What sort of things do you see team owners or people in the pickleball community do well on social that's helping driving the game or the growth of the high performance game?
I think it's important for team owners to realize that when they buy a team, that they're buying the IP of the team. And when you say what are the first steps for a team owner to start converting on a team, it's really recognizing that and turning that IP into something worth something, right? At the end of the day, even if you look at NBA and NFL, certain jerseys, like let's go to baseball, like that blue Yankee fitted, right? There are just certain items and pieces that have come out that have just done very well for them for the franchise and become symbolic to the franchise because of their ability to market those pieces. And obviously it comes with time. Obviously the Yankees being a long-standing elite franchise in the baseball world, it takes time, but at the end of the day, we have seen owners recognize this. Certainly, obviously, there's a whole bunch of different owners doing teams their own way and having their own plans, and maybe some owners have a longer term plan. I don't know, but I think one team that we can all kind of look to in terms of doing things right is the Toronto United. Ricky Leo is he's got a stellar background in marketing himself as an internet persona. He's got the podcast. It does good numbers on TikTok. So I know he understands like how that world works, and you can tell that he does by the way the team is marketed. I would say they're the most active team. Maybe because they're in the region that I live in as well. I see the activity that they do, like pop-ups at the mall. They're the teams that like they're one of the few teams that have gone the length of getting sponsors for their hats, sponsors for their gear, and things like that. You could just see that Ricky is someone who really takes the IP of the team seriously, and he's looking to build it. You could tell even in the boardroom or whatever digital boardroom that we have, he's always he'll have the most to say about, let's say, the way his jerseys look, the way his logo comes off, and this is the kind of involvement we want. Like, we don't necessarily need artists or designers, but we want teams to know that these pieces are important to the growth of their team, especially initially when nobody knows anybody. You have a chance to brand your team and brand it properly. And it really is just microcosmic to the way we've branded the league, right? Like, at the end of the day, it's just about getting the word out there and building the hype in a way that people don't want to miss out on it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mike, obviously when you're running a league and, getting players and all these things, you're probably paying attention very closely to all the things that are changing in pickleball, whether it's at the team level or individual level. What sort of things you see, that is the future of pickleball? Because things are changing very quickly.
I think it's different on the different ends of the spectrum. I think we finally have, hopefully I'm not jinxing this, but we finally have some stability at the top. Obviously, last year was a very chaotic year.
You've ruined it. You've ruined it. You've tanked the league, Mike.
In terms of, I'm more looking at the US, what they had going on down there was very, very chaotic. With players being signed and then not necessarily being signed, and then the leagues being together but separate, and just a lot of activity going on down there. So that now seems to have settled down. So I think that pickleball can kind of grow in a single direction now. So at the top level, there's that piece, right? And we have a bit of an advantage here because they're heavily investing in the growth of pickleball in the US. So we can kind of, ride their coattails a little bit. Obviously, Canada is a different market. We can work with different broadcasters and different sponsors and things that exist in Canada that don't necessarily exist there, or different budgets at least that don't necessarily exist there. So we have the ability to kind of blaze our own trail, but yet still benefit from everything that they're doing down there, right? So that's a really good spot to be in, especially with MLP pushing into Australia and helping out down there with developing their league. Like, it really just, they have a very collaborative attitude about it, right? So now that they've got their, back of house in order, they're able to get out there and really push to grow the sport of pickleball. And then we can all kind of work alongside what they're doing to do those things. Then from the player perspective, I think the big thing that I'm noticing is a lot of new folks coming out. And like you mentioned, Tats, starting to take things more seriously, right? Like, a lot of the pickleball in Canada is what I would call passive. People have decided to play it because it's kind of the sport to play right now. But there aren't that many that have taken it to the level of like, I'm going to travel down to the US to compete in high level tournaments. I'm going to get coaches so that I can learn these different aspects of my game and improve those. Right. So now there is much more appetite for that. And of the folks we saw at the qualifiers this year, the number that are working with at least one coach is much higher than it was the year before. And there are actually a good handful of them working with multiple coaches. So that's kind of where I see the sport developing, is as you get these players coming over from other sports, like racquetball and squash and tennis, they're a lot more used to working with coaches, whereas pickleball's really been a recreational sport in Canada, right? Even if you're playing at the highest level, folks are getting together and it's more of, hey, I get to see all of my friends at this tournament, than it is this like cutthroat competitive environment, right? So we're just kind of starting to develop that. And you see some of the new players come in and they just have a no nonsense attitude, right? They're like, I'm just here to win. Like, it's great if we can all be friends, but I'm here to win. Right. And we've had a couple of people who have mentioned this year that their goal is to become the number one in Canada, where last year we didn't have that kind of hunger coming out. People are just like, oh yeah, I want to see what this is about. And I want to, participate in high level pickleball. But now it's I want to be number one is starting to be a thing. So
yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, a lot of the systems and the ratings are quite fragmented, but what you're establishing is a proper hierarchy and a feed-in system, right? That has some, you can't just register to get in. So it's certainly an advantage for people that are looking for who's best and a benchmark. So that's very cool. Yuri, how about yourself? Vision, trends, future pickleball.
Not a pickleball player myself. I think I'm more focused on developing the professional aspect of the sport and giving our players here at least the impression that you don't like that there's a stepping stone before the US, that you don't have to kind of feel like you gotta like there's a smaller pool you can kind of be the big fish in first. And we would always suggest that if you are Canadian, that you work towards that, because we've seen the concept prove itself, whereby we put on the league and had the first year, and then 3 of our girls got picked up by the US, right? So it kind of really just made it so that by default kind of became the feeder system to the US now, because it gave them a platform to look towards. It also, I think, it was a long overdue for Canada to have properly paying competition for the players. I don't even want to call us proper, because you can look at the US and see what their payouts are like. But we are happy to really have started. A lot of the competition prior to this was simply for bragging rights, and to have players, travel from across the country to play for bragging rights. It's not serious, bro. Like, let's be honest. If battle rap can get money together to pay their rappers, there's no reason why, you know, we
Thanks for
can't
tuning
do
in
the
to
same
Alpha
for our
Pickleball
athletes who work
Podcast
so
with
hard.
Cats.
And that's
If you
really what it
enjoyed
is for
today's
me, is that
episode,
in pickleball,
subscribe,
maybe I
rate,
just,
and
prior to
connect
this,
with
I
us
was
on
too
social
young to
media.
really care or
Stay
really take
alpha
note of it.
on
But
the pickleball
the amount
court
of dedication
until our
I
next
see
session.
from pickle, and I come from the music industry, so I know about like the people sleeping in cars just to make their careers work and stuff like that. But the dedication I see from these pickleball players, you know, especially from year one last year to year two, and the improvement that has come about largely because, you know, we exist, because there's something to aspire to now in Canada, right? And this is not for me. I'm not a player. This is what I'm hearing from the guys at the qualifiers and stuff, saying that, oh, this is now something we have to work towards them, like here at home, and so I think that to me is what drives me. You could replace pickleball with another sport if the community was as supportive, as vibrant, as, you know, as friendly, and all the good qualities that the pickleball community has. I'd be just as supportive of it. I'd be just as inclined to help build the platforms that would help drive the community, build the community, and give it, you know, a profile in the world, right? Because it's crazy to see this, but Canada has the second most paying members when it comes to pickleball associations, right after the US. But when you look at the development of our game prior to the CNPL and other, you know, the pro tours coming into the picture, you would think that like we are a lot further behind than what the US is doing with pickleball. So you know, just here to kind of help bridge the gap a little bit, so that it's not so daunting when our Hannah Blatts, our Angie Walkers, our Alex Walkers get over there. It's not so intimidating up front. Like they can feel like they've seen something like this before. They've been here before in Canada in some way.
Awesome. Well, thank you for both of you for what you do. And thanks for sharing your story.
Cheers, man. Appreciate your time.